Did you know the probate process can either simplify settling an estate or create unexpected challenges for families? Hi, I'm Cesar Espinoza, your certified probate realtor with Equity Real Estate here in Houston, Texas. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Caroline Ortego, a highly regarded probate attorney, for an engaging and informative discussion. Caroline will dive into some key insights about the probate process, and I'll be posing some essential questions to uncover answers to topics like exactly what is probate, and why does it matter, what are the key steps involved, how can families minimize complications or even avoid probate altogether. So this conversation is going to be packed with invaluable information and you won't want to miss it. So let's jump right into it. Caroline, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Caesar. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet, you're welcome. So what can you share with us about the probate process?
Well, a lot of people don't know what probate is. Essentially, it's a judicial process, meaning you have to go before the court and the court is involved. Um, you may be doing probate when you have a will, which means that you're there to prove up the will, to make sure that the will is valid, that people have notice if they want to challenge it, and make sure it's not been revoked. If you just have a will, just a piece of paper, and it hasn't been admitted to probate, it's really just a piece of paper. Sometimes you need probate when you don't have a will. And in that situation, the court is involved to prove who the heirs are. And in both situations, we may need a representative appointed of the estate to do things on behalf of that estate, whether you have a will or don't. At the end of the day, out of the probate process, you're going to get a signed order from a judge.
So why is it necessary to probate, in settling the estate? Why is it necessary to go through the process?
Sure. Well, probate is not always necessary. The best thing to do is to meet with your attorney and get some specific advice to your situation. In some instances, we absolutely need probate. In others, we don't. So some examples of when we would need to probate a will, for example, when the person named as your beneficiary in the will is different than your natural heir,
Yes.
that beneficiary is going to want that will probated. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper, right? Another example would be if we need a personal representative appointed over an estate, whether there's a will or not a will, and that personal representative is authorized to do things like go out and gather assets, get information from an investment company or a brokerage. They need authority to sell a piece of property. They need to gather assets and transfer them to your heirs or your beneficiaries. You would need to probate a will or probate an estate to do that if you didn't have a will. And then another example of something that your personal representative would need to do is maybe deal with creditors and negotiate, settle with them, or use the probate process as a way to minimize the impact of creditors' claims on an estate. So, but you would need to go through the probate process for someone to be authorized to do that on your behalf.
Got it, got it. And so what are some of the key steps involved in the probate process?
A key step would be, like I said, meet with your attorney to figure out, is it necessary? And then if it is, what type of probate? We have more than one type of probate in Texas. Then once your attorneys helped you pick out what avenue are we going to go, then you're going to have a pretty standard process for many of them. You have an application to probate that's filed with the court. Notices go out and are published, et cetera, depending on what type of probate you have. Then there's going to be a hearing. And in that hearing, live testimony is given. It's not a law and order style or Judge Judy style hearing. It's going to be very usually pleasant, simple questions. Who is the decedent? How do you know them? What is your address? It's very, very simple. Then after that hearing, if everything goes well and you prove up your case satisfactorily to the judge, you'll have orders that are signed by the judge. After that, more paperwork. And then depending on the complexity of your probate that's involved, the personal representative, if they're appointed, sometimes they're called an administrator, sometimes they're called an executor. That's when their real work starts, is after the probate process. And then they start doing things like, do we need to file a tax return? Do we need to gather assets? Do we need to deal with creditors or file an inventory? That all happens after that kind of heavy judicial part. Then the real work starts.
Got it. And so what are some of the common challenges that you see that families face during the whole probate process?
Um, well, if they have a will, it can be challenging if it's poorly drafted, meaning they it just wasn't well drafted. So if it has unclear or ambiguous language, if there are no provisions for potentially underage heirs or disabled heirs, if it's outdated, sometimes they wrote the will 45 years ago and they named their neighbor Greg as their executor, and Greg is not here anymore. And then the second level of executor was Greg's wife, and she's not here anymore either. So that can pose a challenge as we have to, that'll cause a wrinkle. Another one would be if the will is handwritten. Handwritten wills are valid in Texas, but if you're probating a handwritten will, you have to have witnesses that can identify that handwriting. They have to have personal knowledge. In my testimony, they have to say why they know. Like, how do you know what this person's handwriting looks like? Oh, well, she sent me Christmas cards every year, or she wrote out the grocery list and I took it to the grocery store and bought the groceries. Um, as somebody ages, it becomes harder and harder to find people with personal knowledge of their handwriting. So while it can be valid, you still have to prove it up, and that part can be challenging. If there is no will, it's always more expensive to probate an estate when we don't have a will. Hands down, that's a challenge. And that's in the best case scenario. We have a similar issue finding witnesses that have personal knowledge enough of the person who died to know who their heirs are, who their spouse was, to know how long have you known the person. And you can't have an interest in that estate. You can't be one of the heirs. So again, we have people moving all over the country now. And it's, maybe you lived in California for 40 years and then you moved to Texas, and now we need to find witnesses. And your kids don't know any of your friends in California, if they're even alive, or how to contact them. So, and older people don't get out necessarily. They don't make friends. They're going to the doctor a lot. There's not a lot of people to choose from. So we can have a lot of challenges when we don't have a will.
Okay, I see. So how does having a will or not having a will, how does that impact the whole probate process?
Well, as long as it's well drafted, it's up to date, it can reduce the cost of the probate, reduce the time involved, and give you a much smoother experience for your surviving spouse or children. But more importantly, you're deciding who's going to get your property when you pass. If you have a blended family where either spouse has children from a prior marriage, and you assume that your spouse is going to get all of your property when you die, think again. Or you're going to get all of their property, all of their interests in their property. Think again. If you don't have that will in place protecting your spouse and designating exactly what they get, they may end up owning the home they live in with your children, or vice versa. So that's a really key thing, is that people don't understand that the state of Texas has laws that tell us where property goes if you don't leave a will, and you can't assume that you know where it's going to end up.
Got it. And so I was going to ask you, like, let's say somebody's looking for a probate attorney. Let's say they've inherited property, or they're going through the probate process, and a loved one passed away. How would they know how to pick a good probate attorney?
Well, a good place to I get a lot of referrals by word of mouth from professionals or people that I've already helped. So asking your friends, did you have a probate attorney? Asking your professional acquaintances, like your realtor, your insurance person, do they know somebody? And then also, once you get some names, I would always get more than one and interview those people. It's like they're interviewing for a job with you. You're trying to hire them to do a job for you. And also asking them questions like, how many probates have you done? How many years have you been doing probate?
Hmm.
You can double check their profiles and presence online. If they are online representing themselves as like their main level of business is personal injury, that's probably not a good fit for you, because although they know what probate is, they may not be the best fit as a probate attorney for you because that's not what they do 24/7. They're focused on this other practice. So I would look for somebody that focuses on probate specifically and has at least 5 years of experience, if not more, doing that in the court. And especially in the county where your loved one died or resided, because getting somebody from Dallas to do your probate here doesn't make a lot of sense. They're not going to know the judges or what to expect. And, like this court's more conservative. This court, they like to communicate this way. They're going to require us to do this extra step. An out of county attorney isn't going to really know that stuff.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And so is there anything else that you want to share with us about the probate process?
Well, I would love to tell you just a couple of high level things about how to avoid probate because we talked about how it can be expensive and challenging, and we don't know what the pitfalls are if we don't prepare well. Your first level of defense across the board is beneficiary designations. Check your beneficiary designations often, frequently, look at them in writing. Make sure you have a primary and at least a secondary named as a beneficiary. That will keep you out of the probate process because that is going to allow that property to pass automatically upon death. Those beneficiaries, all they have to show is a certificate of death. You can do a special type of deed in Texas. We have a variety to choose from of special deeds that can pass real estate automatically upon death. Talk with your attorney about that. Another one, finally, is trust planning. Trust planning is a great way to avoid probate. And there are as many trusts as there are sand on the beach. I'm kidding. It's not that many, but don't assume that a trust wouldn't be a good fit for you without talking to somebody experienced in trust planning, because we have a variety of options available from more simple versions to more complex versions. And it's a great way to plan for incapacity and to avoid probate. I think of it this way. You're going to pay one way or the other, you and your family.
Yes.
Are you going to pay more on the front end for a good estate planning package with maybe a simple trust? Pay that now versus who knows whatever probate costs in 20 years when your probate needs to happen. You could go cheap and do the will, which is great. It's still better than nothing. But if you do the trust planning and pay for it now, it can pay out in dividends. One thing to say about trust, though, is that if you do them, make sure you understand it. You work with your attorney to understand how it works. And then you got to maintain it and kind of remember that it exists as you buy property over time.
Yes, yes. I remember you were going over that with me when you did our trust.
Yeah, so those are my highlights, and I really appreciate you having me, Caesar. This has been a great opportunity to educate the public about probate and how to avoid it. And I look forward to doing more talks with you in the future.
Well, thank you, Caroline. Thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to everybody that's watching. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us. I hope this conversation has been able to clarify some of the complexity surrounding the probate and provided some valuable insight to the folks that are watching. Caroline, before we wrap up, how can our viewers get in touch with you if they need any legal advice or assistance with the probate process?
Sure. So my office is in Katy, and we serve Harris County and surrounding counties. Um, we have a website, lawortego.com. It's LAWORTEGO.com, and all of our contact information is there. And give us a call if you would like to meet with us and find out some more information about your situation.
Terrific, terrific. And for anyone with questions about probate real estate, feel free to reach out to me, Cesar Espinoza, your certified probate realtor with Equity Real Estate here in Houston, Texas. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more helpful content, and share it with anyone who might benefit. Until next time, take care.